Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lucht, and today is a little something different, a little something quick, cooked up, and it's a story I wanted to get out before anyone else did it. I mean, other people have done it, but nobody does it quite like I do it. I say that with all humble, clarity, of course. I mean, it's true. Nobody does it the way I'm going to do it. Just saying. Anyway. So, today is a special, an extra bonus episode featuring the insane story of the Guarulhos Poltergeist and the CIA spooks who loved it.
Submitted for your approval.
In the quiet suburb of Jardim Rosa de Franca, located in Guarulhos, Sao Paulo, Brazil, the fundamental nature of reality for the Marcos family shifted in December 1971. What began as minor unexplained vandalism quickly spiraled into a decade-long siege of paranormal phenomena that would eventually draw the scrutiny of international intelligence agencies. The family at the center of the storm was led by Marcos, a 29-year-old plumber, and his 21-year-old wife, Noemia, living in their modest home alongside their 18-month-old daughter Ruth and other extended family members. They were ill-prepared for the escalating terror that would follow. The initial manifestations of the Guarulhos Poltergeist were deceptively subtle, characterized by objects moving without any apparent physical cause, yet the domestic peace of the Marcos family was soon shattered by aggressive and calculated intrusions. Furniture coverings and mattresses were found systematically slashed despite having been neatly folded just moments prior, a phenomenon that occurred with such speed and precision that no human culprit could be identified. As local newspapers began to publish early reports, drawing intense public scrutiny to the small home, the disturbances took a physical and violent turn. Family members, including Marcos, Noemia, and her daughter, began to suffer from deep cuts and scratches that appeared spontaneously on their bodies in patterns resembling animalistic claw marks. These physical assaults were accompanied by terrifying psychological shifts, particularly in Noemia's daughters, who began experiencing sudden spasms and entering inexplicable trances that suggested a form of possession or deep dissociative states. Perhaps most distressing for the family was the realization that these disturbances were not tied to the physical structure of their house in Jardim Rosa de Franca. The phenomena followed the family with a relentless persistence that created a suffocating sense of inescapable persecution. In an attempt to find safety, the family fled to the home of Noemia's parents, yet the manifestations, ranging from the movement of heavy objects to the sound of unexplained thuds, reappeared there almost immediately. Even the construction of an entirely new residence in Guarulhos failed to provide sanctuary, as the entity or energy responsible continued its campaign of destruction in the new environment. The nature of the phenomena that followed them grew increasingly diverse and dangerous over time. During a particularly intense period between April and October 1974, the family was subjected to quote-unquote rock showers, where stones would begin to fall from ceilings or manifest in mid-air inside closed rooms. Spontaneous fires became a recurring threat, famously including 2 floor polishers that exploded into flames while in use, despite having no electrical faults. The phenomena also manifested as apports, where objects like rosemary branches would appear out of nowhere, or money would vanish from secure locations without explanation. Even efforts to seek spiritual protection through evangelical sessions and exorcisms offered only temporary reprieves. While the activity might halt for a short time, it inevitably resumed, sometimes triggered by the quote-unquote prophetic utterances of religious sensitives. This mobility suggested to investigators like Hernani Guimaraes Andrade, that the phenomena were inextricably linked to the individuals themselves, specifically Noemia, rather than any specific haunted location. To understand the profound terror and specific reactions of the Marcos family, one must delve into the complex cultural and religious landscape of 1970s Brazil, where disparate belief systems often intersected in the lives of citizens. The family were devout members of the Assembleia de Deus, a Pentecostal denomination that emphasizes the literal reality of spiritual warfare and the active presence of demonic forces in the material world. Within this framework, the disturbances were never viewed as a scientific anomaly or psychological byproduct, but as a targeted assault by malevolent entities. This worldview was further complicated by the family's proximity to Umbanda, a syncretic Afro-Brazilian religion. In the localized, often polemical understanding of the time, practitioners of Umbanda were sometimes accused of invoking umalans, low-level predatory spirits, to cast despachos or curses upon others. The Marcos family became convinced that such a curse had been leveled against them, transforming their home into a battlefield where the physical and the metaphysical collided. The specific depiction of these umalans found a chillingly precise blueprint in the 1946 work of Brazilian folklorist Lourenço Braga. Braga described these entities not as ethereal ghosts, but as grotesque, semi-material monsters characterized by a repulsive, animalistic physiology. According to his descriptions, which deeply influenced the local folklore, umalans were fur-covered creatures possessing long, pointed ears, jutting sharp teeth, and exceptionally long, sharp nails. They were noted for their shaky or spasmodic movements, a detail that suggested a physical instability as if they were struggling to maintain a cohesive form in our reality. In the broader context of Umbanda and related traditions, spirits of this class are often associated with the quote-unquote Povo da Rua, or people of the street, or lower astral entities that require specific ritual offerings to be controlled or appeased. Yet the family's Pentecostal faith forbids such negotiations, leaving them feeling defenseless against an aggressive demonic intruder. The family's actual encounters with these entities were described in accounts that reached the heights of high strangeness rarely seen in standard poltergeist literature. These were not merely fleeting shadows, but sustained, terrifying apparitions that exhibited autonomous and dynamic behavior. The sightings often involved dark, hairy humanoids that seemed to manifest directly out of the gloom of the home's hallways or corners. One of the most elaborate and harrowing accounts involves Noemia's father, who claimed to have encountered one of these monsters in the dead of night. He described a physical struggle with a beast-like figure that possessed the very fur and claws described by Braga. He maintained that these entities felt solid and powerful, displaying a shaky gait as it retreated into the shadows after the confrontation. These encounters were frequently preceded by possession trances and sudden spasms affecting Noemia's daughters, during which the children appeared to be under the influence of an external intelligence. During these episodes, the claw marks would appear, red angry welts and deep scratches that manifested on the skin of the family members in real time, matching the jagged nails attributed to the umalan. The family reported that these entities seemed to target specific areas of the house, particularly near Marco's plumbing tools or behind wardrobes, where they would be seen standing motionless before vanishing. These sightings were so consistent and detailed that researchers noted these sorcery-based interpretations had been fully formed and solidified by the family well before any investigators from the IBPP arrived, suggesting the phenomena had perfectly adapted itself to the family's deepest cultural fears. Between April and October 1974, the atmosphere within the Marcos household shifted from one of unsettled anxiety to one of acute, life-threatening crisis, as the phenomena entered a second, significantly more intense phase. The family found themselves under a literal state of siege, most notably from rock showers, a classic but terrifying manifestation where stones of various size would fall from the ceiling or appear to manifest out of thin air within closed, windowless rooms. These stones were often reported as being warm to the touch, and their trajectories frequently defied the standard laws of physics, curving around corners or dropping vertically at high speeds without any identifiable point of origin. During the same window, the physical safety of the family was directly compromised as the mysterious bodily cuts intensified in frequency and severity. The assaults followed a grim chronological progression. The wounds first targeted Marcos, the father, before moving to Noemia's daughter, and finally afflicting Noemia herself. These were not mere surface scratches. They were deep, bleeding lacerations, often arranged in parallel sets of 3 or 4, mirroring the claw marks associated with the beast-like apparitions the family reported seeing in the shadows. The violence was not limited to flesh. Clothing was found torn to shreds inside dresser drawers, and valuable objects were shattered by an unseen force with such regularity that the family stopped attempting to replace them. Adding to the psychological strain, money began to disappear from supposedly secure locations within the home without any explanation, leaving the family in a state of constant financial and emotional depletion. The scientific investigation into the Guarulhos case was spearheaded by the Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysical Research, or IBPP, an organization that represented a sophisticated shift in how the paranormal was studied in South America. Founded in 1963 by Hernani Guimarães Andrade, the IBPP was built upon the principles of rigorous engineering and empirical observation. Andrade, a civil engineer by profession, was a pioneer who sought to move parapsychology out of the realm of pure spiritualism and into a framework of psychobiophysics. He was known for his methodological discipline, developing specialized equipment such as pulsed magnetic field detectors and electrostatic sensors designed to capture the physical footprint of anomalous events. His credibility was such that his work bridged the gap between fringe scientific inquiry and the interest of governmental bodies, including analysts within the CIA. The IBPP's decade-long investigation into the Marcos family, spanning from 1973 to 1984, remains one of the most exhaustive longitudinal studies in the history of the field. During this period, the team meticulously documented the case, collecting over 6 hours of taped witness testimony and dozens of photographs of both the physical damage and the claw marks on the family members. Andrade's methods involved more than just passive observation. His team conducted filmed reconstructions of events and utilized detailed phenomena profiles to categorize the physical, psychological, and environmental variables at play. In a particularly proactive move, the IBPP even attempted to provoke recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK, through hypnosis, hoping to determine if the phenomena were being unconsciously triggered by the family members and if that energy could be directed or controlled. Before the Guarulhos case, Andrade and the IBPP had established a reputation through the investigations of other high-profile Brazilian disturbances that informed their approach to the Marcos family. One such notable precursor was the stone-throwing ghost of Iparanga, where Andrade utilized his engineering background to analyze the trajectories of stones that appeared to manifest and fall within closed structures, much like the rock showers later seen in the Guarulhos case. Another significant case involved the Poltergeist of Suzano, which provided the IBPP with early data on spontaneous combustion and the movement of heavy furniture, phenomena that would later be mirrored in the explosion of the floor polishers in the Marcos home. These previous investigations allowed Andrade to refine his theories on the biological organizer field, a concept he proposed to explain how consciousness might interact with and manipulate physical matter. To place Andrade's work within a global context, one must understand the history of investigations into recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK, something I go into a bit more at length in the Sex and the Supernatural episode. The term itself was popularized in the late 1950s by parapsychologists William G. Roll and J.G. Pratt, who moved away from the ghost hypothesis to focus on the living agent, typically an individual under intense psychological or physiological stress who serves as the unconscious epicenter of the disturbances. Some of the most compelling evidence for RSPK comes from cases like the 1967 Rosenheim Poltergeist in Germany, where physicists and engineers documented inexplicable electrical surges and the physical rotation of heavy paintings, or the Seaford case on Long Island, where dozens of incidents were witnessed by police and researchers in a controlled environment. This history of research suggests that poltergeist activity was not a haunting of a place, but a manifestation of a person, a theory that Andrade applied directly to Noemia and her daughters as he tracked the phenomena across multiple residences. The scientific significance of the IBPP's work lies in its integration of cultural context with physical data. By recognizing that the family's belief in umulans and sorcery might be shaping the morphology of the RSPK, Andrade provided a blueprint for how psychological states can dictate physical outcomes. This rigorous documentation of apports, possession trances, and spontaneous fires eventually made the IBPP's files a primary source for the CIA's Stargate project, as the agency sought to understand the national security implications of weaponized psychokinesis. Ultimately, the legacy of Andrade and the IBPP is a body of research that challenges materialist assumptions, suggesting that human consciousness may possess a latent capacity to affect the physical world in ways that current scientific frameworks are only beginning to grasp. Andrade's work eventually reached an international audience when he shared his findings with Guy Lyon Playfair, a Cambridge-educated journalist who would later gain fame for his investigations into the infield poltergeist in England. Playfair's involvement allowed for a comparative analysis of the Guarulhos events against other global cases, such as the 1977-81 Mulhouse case in France, which also featured dark apparitions and mysterious cuts on furniture. The IBPP developed innovative phenomena profiles to categorize the physical, psychological, and environmental aspects of the case, maintaining international contacts to ensure their research was part of a broader cross-cultural dialogue. The complexity of the case was deepened by psychological examinations of Noemia. While IBPP psychologists found no overt psychical abnormalities that would classify her as a traditional psychokinetic agent, they did note indications of dissociative episodes. This led to a dual interpretation. While the physical evidence of fires and cuts was undeniable, some phenomena, like the relocation of objects, might have been caused by Noemia unconsciously during these dissociative states. This intersection of psychological distress and external paranormal activity was further complicated by the family's religious life. Evangelical sessions and exorcisms were performed to halt the disturbances. While these occasionally provided temporary relief, the phenomena always returned. The Central Intelligence Agency's sustained interest in the Guarulhos Poltergeist case represents a significant chapter in the history of the Stargate Project, a secret U.S. government initiative that officially operated from the 1970s until 1995 to investigate psychic phenomena for military and intelligence applications. Documents from the CIA's FOIA reading room reveal that the agency's involvement was not merely academic. They were specifically monitoring the Brazilian case as a rare instance of alleged intentional poltergeist activity. Unlike many domestic cases that appeared random or accidental, the Guarulhos events were viewed by CIA analysts as a potential proof of concept for the intentional induction of psychokinetic energy. The agency's primary objective was to determine if the human mind could be trained or triggered to produce physical effects, such as spontaneous fires, the movement of heavy objects, or the disruption of electronics, on command, thereby transforming a domestic disturbance into a viable tool for national security. The mechanism of the CIA's involvement relied heavily on the rigorous work of Hernani Guimarães Andrade, and the IBPP, rather than a large-scale deployment of field agents to the Sao Paulo suburb. The agency recognized Andrade's credibility as a civil engineer and parapsychologist, viewing his detailed phenomena profiles and electromagnetic data as high-quality intelligence. The CIA compiled and translated extensive records of Andrade's research, including hours of audio testimony, photographic evidence of physical injuries, and technical notes on the spontaneous combustion of the floor polishers. This allowed the CIA to conduct a remote analysis of the case, integrating the Brazilian data with their own ongoing research into remote viewing and psychokinesis. By studying Andrade's findings, the CIA sought to bridge the gap between Brazilian psi and the standardized laboratory protocols they were developing in the United States. The theoretical framework for weaponizing such phenomena focused on the role of the living agent, in this case, Noemia, and the environmental or cultural factors that appeared to catalyze her psychokinetic outbursts. CIA analysts were fascinated by the idea that cultural expectations, such as the family's aforementioned belief in umulans and sorcery, could dictate the morphology of specific physical forms the energy took. This led to a hypothesis that if the psychological stressors and cultural framework of an agent could be manipulated, the resulting energetic interactions could be directed towards specific targets. For the purpose of psychological operations or direct action, the CIA considered whether an agent could be conditioned to unconsciously ignite fuel depots, sabotage sensitive communications equipment, or create apparitions and physical disturbances to destabilize enemy leadership without leaving a trace of conventional weaponry. Furthermore, the CIA's analysis of the Guarulhos case involved detailed comparative studies with other international incidents, like the previously mentioned 1977-81 Mulhouse case in France, to identify universal laws of psi. They were particularly interested in the IBPP's hypnosis experiments, which aimed to provoke and control recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK. The agency explored the possibility that through specialized psychological conditioning or trance induction, the raw energy seen in poltergeist outbreaks could be harnessed for practical, repeatable applications. This interest reflected a broader Cold War concern that the Soviet Union might be developing similar psychotronic capabilities, necessitating a thorough understanding of how to both induce and defend against weaponized paranormal phenomena. The legacy of this involvement remains a startling reminder of how seriously the intelligence community once viewed the potential for the human mind to influence physical reality on a global stage. The Guarulhos case remains a landmark in parapsychology because it defies easy categorization. The persistence of the phenomena across multiple locations, following the family to a new residence and even to Noemi's parents' home, challenged any explanation tied to specific haunted buildings. It suggested an intelligence or an energy that was fundamentally linked to the people involved rather than the environment. Today, the case continues to be a subject of study, representing a unique intersection where folklore, deep psychology, and Cold War-era national security concerns meet. It remains an unresolved mystery that questions our materialist assumptions about the nature of consciousness and its ability to influence the physical world. There you have it, folks. The closest thing I've ever done to a straight read, I think, except for maybe my necrophilia Halloween episode a while back. I cut out all the times I yelled fuck and all the times I seriously messed up all the proper nouns and the breakfast burps, etc. So I hope you enjoyed it. I may toss some of these out more so here and there when I find stuff that only provides me with so much information. Thanks for listening, folks. This has been Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lucht. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.